Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Sweet 16 awaits. Who's poised for the biggest jump now that the big opening weekend is past? We'll get you the reactions from those closest to the games. And this Shohei Ohtani story just keeps mutating. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
We got the requisite craziness. Number one seed pushed to the brink in overtime, a 2 seed having to struggle with a double-digit seed. But these final 16 teams, it's mostly who we expected. In fact, there's only one team outside of the top 6 seeds. We got all the 1 seeds, all the 2 seeds as we get here toward a college basketball men's national title. Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball joins me now. And Isaac, as we get through this first weekend, what is, I think, universally acknowledged in American sports as one of the best sports weekends on the calendar, what is the big storyline that you have taking away from all of this right now?
You just said it, Peter. This was a season that saw like anarchy. We had top 10 teams losing on the road all season. But it was like ranked teams just like, you know what? I don't want a number next to my name. Let's go lose, right? And then, of course, that means that in March, we get the exact flip. As you just said, it's one of the chalkiest Sweet 16s we've ever had. Yeah. The 6th lowest seed aggregate ever. When you add all the seeds up, it's 53. The lowest we've ever had is 49. And of course, that happens in this kind of year. But here's my mantra always. Upsets early, chalk late. This is what we want to happen. Why? Because it's better basketball. With all due respect to Cinderella, we're going to get some great basketball in the Sweet 16 next weekend, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, you mentioned it, like Duke and James Madison. That was the James Madison upset. It's a great one, but we want Duke in the Sweet 16 in the Elite
Not
Eight.
the Dukes. We want Duke, not the Dukes.
Right, exactly. And look, part of what we love about this tournament is getting the stories that we had never expected to get. And we're still getting plenty of that. So as you try and handicap this moving forward, it seems like, UConn looks like a hegemon. They look unstoppable. We did get some of these teams like Houston and Marquette. They got pushed here, that side of the bracket, maybe looking a little bit more vulnerable than these other parts. What do you see over in the South?
Well, the thing for me in on that right side in totality is that this was a bad weekend for all the Purdue haters out there, because Purdue looked phenomenal on Sunday. Zach Edey had an incredible game in the first half, Peter. I mean, it was just insane. But that South bracket that you mentioned is pretty wide open. It's good news for Marquette that Tyler Kolek, who was the Big East Player of the Year last year, has come back from an oblique injury, looks really good. But you just said it. Duke looked great. Jared McCain, one of the most interesting freshmen and incredible freshmen in America, had a game for himself on Sunday, 30 points. So really good stuff. That right side of the bracket opening up a little bit, but Purdue looks better than a lot of people thought.
If there was one upset, if we can find one here, Clemson taking care of Baylor in that 6-3 matchup. Clemson, we got the word over the weekend. They maybe having a little bit of eyes at other conferences potentially with the ACC influx here. But Clemson and Arizona, I mean, that could be a really, really fun game. What do you see in that one?
Well, interestingly, Peter, I think Clemson is the better matchup for Arizona than was Baylor, just because of what they can do. PJ Hall can match up in the front court with Umar Ballo. They've got some good guards that can match up with Caleb Love, who transferred, interestingly, from North Carolina, from the ACC, where he's played Clemson before. And so that makes for a very interesting matchup as well. You mentioned the Baylor of it. Both Drew brothers lost on Sunday. Scott Drew is the head coach of Baylor. They go down. Bryce Drew, one of the most famous shots in NCAA tournament history, head coach at Grand Canyon, they go down. But this ACC, Peter, we talk about things that have been backwards all season. The ACC has been much maligned. They got the most teams left in this entire tournament. They make up a full quarter of the Sweet 16, Peter.
Yeah, this is one of those down is up until the tournament. Apparently, is how the season is going to go. You mentioned Purdue looking great. I feel like we have to also give flowers for a moment to Gonzaga and what has gone on there as a program, because we're talking about a team that now all they do is go to the Sweet 16, 9 straight Sweet 16s for a program that, you know, for you and I, when we're growing up, they're the underdog, they're the Cinderella, they're the great story. And now they're like a borderline blue blood. This is just a remarkable, it is rare to see something like this in college athletics for a team to come out of the primordial ooze and ascend the way that they have over the last decade.
Yeah, Peter, I got no time for all, like somebody was coming at me on Twitter on Saturday because I had said Gonzaga reminds me of North Carolina from 2 years ago. Remember, they didn't have a great season, had a great run all the way to the national championship game. Gonzaga right now reminds me a lot of that. And somebody said, they haven't played anybody. My dude, they won at Rupp Arena against Kentucky. They went to St. Mary's and knocked them off, and then they just blitzed, albeit a shorthanded Kansas team, but it's still Kansas on Saturday. That second half was the most impressive thing I saw.
The brakes off those boys.
I mean, legitimately, I don't care. You've still got Hunter Dickinson out there. You've still got these other dudes. Peter, that second half was the most impressive thing that Gonzaga what they did was the most impressive thing I saw all weekend.
Stay up to date all year on college basketball by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On College Basketball on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, we go around the country for local reactions to this weekend's tournament games. Before we get to that, there were a few non-tournament sports headlines to get you caught up on. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, all kinds of opportunities to bet on some futures here. The top 3 1 seeds only strengthen their grip on the national title odds. UConn remain the favorite, plus 240. Houston, plus 550. And Purdue at 6-1. Purdue was absolutely on fire in that round of 32 domination over Utah State. They look good. Or is it time to fade them? Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinion, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's playoff seeding time in the NBA, and the Warriors and Wolves faced off with much needed positioning on the line.
The Wolves trailed by 8 at halftime. They had a miserable start to this game offensively. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. And then they built a lead as big as 8 in the second half, mostly on the backs of the bench. The Timberwolves bench was awesome in the third quarter and really the start of the fourth quarter. Minnesota trailed by 3 to start the final period of the game, and then led by as many as 8 early in the fourth, led by 5 when Anthony Edwards and Naz Reid came back in the game a little past the midway point in the fourth quarter. But the Warriors, of course, aren't going to go away. Golden State's played a lot of close games this year. It's obviously a veteran team, well, a mix of a very veteran team mixed with some very young players. And while the Timberwolves did a pretty good job for most of the game against, you know, the Steph Currys and the Klay Thompsons, for the most part, those guys weren't super efficient scoring the basketball.
And the Heat demolished the Cavs to pull closer to the play-in playoff line.
The Heat beat the Cavs 121-84. This one was over pretty early on, David. It was kind of over. It felt like it was over by halftime, but you can never be too careful in today's NBA. But then by midway through the third quarter, the Heat went up by 40 points. And at that point, yeah, we knew it was over. The Cavs did not look like they wanted to be there. That was maybe my biggest takeaway of why this was such a dominant, one-sided game. But also credit to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo for setting the tone early on. Jimmy was playing with pace. He goes out to take his first quarter rest. Bam just takes the baton right from where Jimmy left off, and he's getting to the basket. He's playing great defensively, doing all the Bam things. And we get a nice, boring, drama-free win.
The Purdue Boilermakers made a statement on Sunday when they dismantled Utah State. Could they be the team to end the Big Ten's championship drought?
Is there anybody in the country that can stop Purdue's 7'4" giant Zach Edey? Sunday, he had a double-double before the first half ended versus Utah State. The Boilers completely dismantled Utah State 106-67. And, Utah State, they came out okay. I mean, it was a close game for the first half. And then it was like they noticed they were playing Zach Edey. They just started playing dumb, making dumb fouls, taking shots just because they're like, oh, there's a 7'4" guy there. Let me just jack one up from over here with no mode. They just stopped playing. They got themselves intimidated by Zach Edey. Now, even had they gone right at Zach Edey, they would have had more problems. A lot of people have problems with Zach Edey. Almost everybody has problems with Zach Edey. It's incredible. He had 23 points and 14 rebounds in that game, and he sat down early because that game was a wrap.
Gonzaga is the Cinderella no more. They've made 9 straight Sweet 16s. If you didn't pick them on your bracket, then that's on you.
Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs are in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament for the 9th consecutive year after beating up on the Kansas Jayhawks. 89-68 was the final score. I'm Andy Patton, the host of the Locked On Zags podcast. Gonzaga was actually down 1 at the end of the first half, but went on a huge run to start the second half, and Kansas never recovered. Through the first 18 minutes of the second half, Kansas had just 18 points, finished with 24. Gonzaga, meanwhile, continued their dominance offensively. Ben Gregg, 15 points, 9 boards, perfect from the field. This team will now take on the winner of the Purdue and Utah State game that will take place on Sunday afternoon. We're going to have more on that game. We're also going to talk about Gonzaga's women's game, which is taking place at 4:30 p.m. on Saturday. Recaps of that game, getting ready for Gonzaga's upcoming opponent, all that coming up on a future episode of the Locked On Zags podcast. Don't miss it.
The North Carolina State Wolfpack. They're the Cinderella we need right now because they're the only one. They won 5 games in 5 days to take the ACC tournament title, upset the 6-seeded Texas Tech Raiders, and now they are headed to the Sweet 16.
Your NC State Wolfpack are going to the Sweet 16. Real sentence. That happened. Is this a dream? Is this a fever dream right now?
Hey, listen, it hurt like hell to hold that sign up, but guess what? Guess what? We go, you know what I mean? What those young men are going through, 5 games, 5 days, 5 wins, back that up with the first ever tournament win in Keith's career at NC State, back that up with the second ever tournament win in Keith's career at NC State. I'll tell you what, how sweet it is to still be dancing. How sweet it is to still be able to get a little bachata, a little tango, a little, just a little something. Hit the Dougie, do whatever you do your line dance, do your 2-step. But either way it goes, this NC State team is still dancing.
It's a Texas-sized battle. Either Texas A&M or Houston would be moving on, and we got all of that size and more.
But I also want to take a moment just to breathe because I was speechless. I left that game actually speechless. I say walked away from my TV. I walked away just holding my head, what just happened. It was the ultimate culture victory for the Houston Cougars. No question about it. Jamal Shead played almost a full 45 minutes before fouling out. 4 of the 5 starters had 5 fouls. Everyone in a jersey that was, they're about to pull Mayzetta Sammy. There was just who didn't play? Could Kellen have put on a jersey and played a few more minutes they needed him to? I don't know. I feel bad for Javier Francis only getting 19 minutes in foul trouble, but he participated. He had the blocks at the rim, great rim defense. He had his 5 fouls though, so his minutes were limited to 19. Jalen Roberts had 13 points, 8 rebounds, crucial buckets down the stretch. Emmanuel Sharp had a career high 30 points. LJ Cryer 20. Jamal Shead 21 and 10. Sedlock came in and had a couple big rebounds. Malik Wilson had the big bag cover the layup. Damian Dunn had a couple big tough pull-up jump shots. Ramon Walker had the putback, coming in on one leg with the putback. And then Ryan stinking Elvin comes in, they let him catch the ball, and foul him. He misses the first one, his first shot in a pressure situation with real pressure, probably since high school, like we're being really honest, right? And just wets the second to ice the game.
Coming up, the Shohei Ohtani story just keeps getting weirder. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even after it starts, up to an hour, in fact, after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute tickets. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets from football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Right now, new Gametime users get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Shohei Ohtani is set to address the media on the story with his former interpreter, Ippei Mitsuhara. This is a story that began as an eyebrow raiser and has morphed into a full-blown conspiracy. Locked On Major League Baseball host Sully tells us why it's gotten so out of hand.
Nope. This has to do with Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter, Ippei Mitsuhara, who up until a few days ago was the closest friend in Shohei Ohtani's life. And now he's, I knew him just a little bit to pay off $4 million worth of gambling debts. We're doing a live stream right now, and so we're going to see a couple of people here. And Pablo, who is an everyday Sully, says, Ippei will be paid handsomely for falling on the sword if they somehow manage to brush it under a rug. Okay, maybe, but this is not exactly going to be an internal situation, is it? When you have money being wired to an illegal gambling situation, and there are 2 commas in the amounts of the wires. I know it probably wasn't all one big gulp. It was probably in little spurts here or there. But, you do get alerts. I have to pick up the alerts from Wells Fargo if I transfer a few $100s. I can imagine if they start to equal 4.5 million tomatoes, you're going to get a few alerts.
This is something we just aren't used to here for a number of reasons. The United States is not the only place that has betting that's legal, right? And there are other countries that are managing to have sporting leagues when gambling has been legal for a long time. And these are not stories that we hear about every day. This is an adjustment period. And part of the whole point of legalizing gambling is that you don't have to have these shady backdoor deals and everything can be on the level. That doesn't mean people aren't going to have gambling issues. That's still going to happen. And if you have a problem, get the help that you need. There are resources out there for you. But we are now a country acclimatizing to a world in which gambling is legal. And it's created all sorts of bang-on effects that I'm not sure culturally, intellectually, philosophically, institutionally, we were ready for. And then when you bring in people from all around the world, international players, young players, college players, 22-year-olds, 25-year-olds, even full-blown adults in their 30s, this is a difficult thing for everyone to deal with. And as a sports culture in the United States, we are just now getting used to all of this. We didn't grow up with all of this. And so I think we're a little too fast to go, oh, well, look at the leagues. They're all in bed with these gambling companies. And so it's weird to be. No, it's not. It's not. It's really not. It's that sometimes these things can happen. And we are in this adjustment period right now in American sports. And finally, after the Portland Trailblazers traded away Damian Lillard, everyone knew a rebuild was just beginning. It appears they're doing this correctly, though. On Saturday, Portland started just the second all-rookie starting lineup in the last 50 years. They ended up falling to the Nuggets by just 3 points. This was the first time an NBA team sent out 5 rookies to start since the Golden State Warriors did so August 26th, 2012. This according to Elias. If you look up rebuild in the dictionary, that's how you do it. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, what storyline tried to compete with Shohei Ohtani during this Major League Baseball offseason? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.